Hello, my little devil darlings. This is Penny, the angelic sweetheart here, and welcome to my podcast. Sorry. Okay, let's try that again. Welcome to another episode of Paranormal Penny Podcast. Sorry about that. And I kind of have to be quiet because it's like literally 12:38 at night right now. And yeah, and this is also the first episode of my podcast series that I'm doing by myself because everybody else is legit asleep. So anyway, today we are going to be talking about a famous murderer. And who is it, you ask? Well, judging by this title that you've seen, you guessed it, Jeffrey Dahmer. And yes, you probably heard of him already, and you know what he did. But those of you that have never heard of him, well, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast, because I'm going to be reading this biography page about him, since I don't know how to quite explain in detail on my own of who he is. Besides, I kind of don't 100% know what his past was. But I'm gonna go ahead and read it. Stupid ads. Anyway, let's get started. Okay. Jeffrey Dahmer was an American serial killer who took the lives of 17 males between 1778 and 1991. Over the course of more than 13 years, Dahmer sought out men, mostly African American. Hold up. African American? Sweetie, that's racist if you ask me. Very racist. Anyway. I can't talk. I can't read. Dahmer sought out, men, mostly African American, at gay bars, malls, and bus stops, lured them home with promises of money or sex, and gave them alcohol laced with drugs before strangling them to death. He would then engage in sex acts with the corpses before dismembering them and disposing of them, often keeping their skulls or genitals as souvenirs. He frequently took photos of his victims at various stages of the murder cases so he can recollect each act afterward and relive the experience. Oh, wow, that makes me want to throw up. But I bet you it gets worse from here. Dahmer was captured in 1991 and sentenced to 16 life terms. He was killed by fellow prison inmate Christopher Scarver in 1994. Well, I didn't know that. Okay. Now let's go way back and see his reasonings for the murders. Okay. Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21st, 1960, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. He was described as an energetic and happy child until the age of 4, when surgery to correct a double hernia seemed to affect a change in the boy. Noticeably subdued, he became increasingly withdrawn following the birth of his younger brother and the family's frequent moves. By his early teens, he was disengaged, tense, and largely friendless. Okay. Dahmer claims that his compulsions toward necrophilia and murder began around the age of 14. Yeah, it's obvious that you were a necrophile, honey, and that makes me really sick. Ugh. That's just gross. Anyway. But it appears that the breakdown of his parents' marriage and their acrimonious divorce a few years later may have been the catalyst of turning these thoughts into actions. By the time of his first killing, Dahmer's alcohol consumption had spun out of control. He dropped out of Ohio State University after one quarter term, and his recently remarried father insisted that he join the army. Dahmer enlisted in late December 1976 and was posted to Germany shortly after. His drinking problem persisted, and in early 1981, the army discharged him, although German authorities would later investigate possible connections between Dahmer and murders that took place in the area during that time. Sorry, hold on. Don't do that again, you scared the shit out of me. Not you guys, freaking ad just played and it scared the shit out of me. Alright, where was I? Dang it. Oh, that's where I was. Okay. His drinking problem persisted, and in early 1981, the army discharged him, although German authorities would later investigate possible connections between Dahmer and murders that took place in the area during that time. It is not believed that he took any more victims while serving in the army armed forces. Following his discharge, Dahmer returned home to Ohio. An arrest later that year for disorderly conduct prompted his father to send Dahmer to live with his grandmother in Wisconsin, but his alcohol problem continued. He was arrested the following summer for indecent exposure. He was arrested once again in 1986 when two boys accused him of masturbating in front of them. He received a 1-year probationary sentence. That is the most stupidest excuse to arrest someone. For freaking trying to relieve themselves, some people get off on that shit. Doing sexual acts in public and having people watching them, some people get off on that. Maybe he got off on that at one point. That's a very stupid reason to arrest someone. But then again, this is the 1900s. Things were a lot different back then. So, yeah. Okay. Dahmer murdered 17 men between 1978 and 1999. He was careful to select victims on the fringes of society who were often ignorant of borderline criminal, making their disappearances less noticeable and reducing the likelihood of his capture. He lured them to his home with promises of money, sex, then strangled them to death. He engaged in sex acts with their bodies, but kept their bodies parts as photos as souvenirs. Oh gosh. Oh, that is disgusting. That is beyond gross. Anyway. Dahmer's first murder occurred just after graduating high school in June 1976 when he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks and took him home to his parents' house. Dahmer proceeded to get the young man drunk. When Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer killed him by striking him in the head and strangling him with a barbell. Dahmer dismembered the corpse of his first victim, packed the body parts in plastic bags, and buried them behind his parents' home. He later exhumed the remains, crushed the bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered them across the wooded ravine. Ugh. It wasn't until September 1987 that Dahmer took his second victim, Stephen Tuomi. They checked into a hotel room. And drank, and Dahmer eventually awoke to find Tuomi dead with no memory of the previous night's activities. He bought a large suitcase to transport Tommy's body to his grandmother's basement, where he dismembered and masturbated on the corpse before disposing the remains. Only after Dahmer killed another 2 victims at his grandmother's home did she tire of her grandson's late nights and drunkenness, although she had no knowledge of his other activities, and she forced him to move out of the premises in 1988. Well, good. The truth was probably too much for you to bear. That September... What's that number? Oh, okay. That September... Hey! Quit doing that. Sorry. My computer's doing crap on its own. Excuse me. Okay. That September 1989, Dahmer had an extremely lucky escape. An encounter with a 13-year-old 18-year-old Laotian boy resulted in charges of sexual exploitation and second-degree sexual assault for Dahmer. He pleaded guilty, claiming that the boy had appeared much older. Okay. I don't know what to say to that other than, yeah, some teens and children do look a lot older than they actually are. But yeah, still, it's disgusting nonetheless. While awaiting sentencings for his sexual assault case, Dahmer again put his grandmother's basement to gruesome use. In March 1989, he lured, drugged, strangled, and sodomized. Let's do that again. In March 1989, he lured, drugged, strangled, sodomized, photographed, dismembered, and disposed of Anthony Sears, an aspiring model. At his trial for child molestation in 1989, Dahmer was the model of contrition, arguing eloquently in his own defense about how he had seen the error of his ways and that his arrest marked a turning point in his life. His defense argued that he needed treatment, not incarceration, and the judge agreed, handing down a 1-year prison sentence on day of release. Sweetie, you should have gotten 20 years. Maybe even more. Allowing Dahmer to work at his job during the day and return to the prison at night, as well as a 5-year probationary sentence. Years later, in an interview with CNN, Lionel Dahmer stated that he wrote a letter to the court that issued the sentence, requesting psychological help for before his son's parole. However, Dahmer was granted an early release by the judge, only serving 10 months of his sentence? What? He briefly lived with his grandmother following his release, during which time he does not appear to have added to his body count before moving back to his own apartment. 10 months? Really? 10 freaking months of being in jail. That is stupid. It should have been longer. Anyway. Over the following 2 years, Dahmer's victims count accelerated, bringing his total from 4 to 17. He developed rituals as he progressed, experimenting with chemicals. No, I mean experimenting with chemical means of disposal and often consuming the flesh of his victims. Dahmer also attempted crude lobotomies, drilling into victims' skulls while they were still alive and injecting them with muriatic acid. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is... I can only imagine what it could have done to those poor men. Excuse me. Jeez, I'm so yawny. On May 27th, 1991, Dahmer's neighbor, Sandra Smith, called the police to report that an Asian boy was running naked in the street. When the police arrived, the boy was incoherent, and they accepted the word of Dahmer, a white man in a largely poor African community, that the boy was his 19-year-old lover. In fact, that the boy was 14 years old and a brother of the Laotian teen. Dahmer had molested 3 years earlier. The police escorted Dahmer and the boy home, clearly not wishing to become embroiled in a homosexual domestic disturbance. They only took a cursory look around before leaving. They should have taken more drastic freaking measures. Okay. Once the police left the scene, Dahmer killed the boy and proceeded with his usual rituals. Had they conducted even a basic search, police officers would have found the body of Dahmer's 12th victim, Tony Hughes. Before he was finally arrested, Dahmer killed 4 more men. Dahmer's killing spree ended when he was arrested on July 22nd, 1991. The body parts found... I'm so sorry, I keep yawning. The body parts found in Dahmer's refrigerator and Polaroid photographs of his victims became inextricably associated with his notorious killing spree. Till 2 Milwaukee police officers were led to Dahmer when they picked up Tracy Edwards, a 32-year-old African-American man who was wandering the streets with handcuffs dangling from his wrist. They decided to investigate the man's claims that a weird dude had drugged and restrained him. They arrived at Dahmer's apartment, where he calmly offered to get the keys for the handcuffs. Edwards claimed that the knife Dahmer had threatened him with was in the bedroom. Okay, read that again. Edwards claimed that the knife Dahmer had threatened him with was in the bedroom. There you go. When the officer went in... Yeah, it says in. To... These freaking words! I can't pronounce these words! Corroborate the story. I think that's how you pronounce it. He noticed Polaroid photographs of dismembered bodies laying around. Dahmer was subdued by the officers. Good. Subsequent searches revealed a head in the refrigerator, 3 more in the freezer, and a catalog of other horrors, including preserved skulls, jars containing genitalia, and excessive gallery of macabre Polaroid photographs of his victims. In 1996, wow, that's before the year I was born. Following Dahmer's death, a group of Milwaukee businessmen raised more Okay. Raised more than 400,000 to purchase the items he used for his victims, including blade saws, handcuffs, and a refrigerator to store body parts? That much money? Seriously? Wow. Okay. They promptly destroyed them in an effort to distance the city from the horrors of Dahmer's actions and ensuing media circus surrounding his trial. Okay. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty gross. Anyway. Dahmer's trial began in 1992. Given that the majority of Dahmer's victims were African American, is that a period? No, that's a comma. Okay, read that again. Given that the majority of Dahmer's victims were African American, oh my gosh, there were considerable racial tensions, so strict. When am I gonna be able to freaking read stuff properly? Okay. There were considerable racial tensions, so strict security precautions were taken, including an 8-foot barrier, I don't know how to pronounce that, of bulletproof glass that separated him from the gallery. The inclusion of only... Yeah, it says inclusion, okay. Of only one African American on the jury provoked further unrest, but the ultimately contained and short-lived. Lionel Dahmer and his second wife attended the trial throughout. Dahmer initially pleaded not guilty to all his charges, despite having confessed to the killings during the police interrogation. He eventually changed his plea to guilty by virtue of insanity. His defense then offered the gruesome details of his behavior as proof that only someone insane could commit such terrible acts. The jury chose to believe the prosecution's assertion that Dahmer was fully aware that his acts were evil and chose to commit them anyway. On February 15th, 1992, he was approximately 10 hours deliberation to find him guilty, but sane on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, with a 16th term tacked on in May. I can't read. Sorry, guys. Okay. Dahmer reportedly adjusted well to prison life, although he was initially kept apart from the general population. He eventually convinced authorities to allow him to integrate more fully with other inmates. He found religion in the form of books and photos sent to him by his father, and he was granted permission by the Colombian Correctional Institution to be baptized by a local pastor. What? Wait. I think I remember hearing about that. Maybe Grandma told me? I don't remember. That he accepted Jesus as a savior and everything. Maybe the fact that he was baptized proved it. That he was saved. Wow, that is shocking. That is very shocking. But anyway, let's continue. Dahmer was killed on November 28th, 1994 by his fellow prison inmate Christopher Scarver. In accordance with his inclusion and regular work details, Dahmer was assigned to work with 2 other convicted murderers, Scarver and Jesse Anderson. After they had been left alone to complete their tasks, guards returned to find that Scarver had brutally beaten both men with a metal bar from the prison weight room. Dahmer was pronounced dead after approximately 1 hour. Anderson succumbed to his injuries days later. Wow. In 2015, Scarver spoke to the New York Post about his reasons for killing Dahmer. Scarver alleged that he was disturbed not only by Dahmer's crimes, but by a habit Dahmer had developing of fashioning severed limbs from prison food to antagonize other inmates. Okay. After being taunted by Dahmer and Anderson during their work detail, Scarver said that he confronted Dahmer about his crimes before beating the two men to death. He also claimed that the prison guards allowed the murders to happen by leaving them alone. Okay, I'm not sure about that. Okay. In August 2012, nearly 2 decades after his death, it was reported that Dahmer's childhood home in Bath, Ohio, where he committed his first murder in 1978 and buried his victim's remains, was on the market. Its owner, musician Chris Butler, stated that the property would make a great home as long as the buyer could get past the horror factor. In March 2016, Butler put the house up for rent for $8,000 for the week of the Republican National Convention. Okay. As of July 2017, the house was no longer listed on the market according to Zillow.com. Okay. And the rest is about movies and books. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna give my honest opinion. Despite the fact that Dahmer himself, even though that he pretty much got baptized and saved and everything in the end, I don't think anyone who learns about him is ever going to truly forget about his murders, especially decades later. We're now in 2021, and just reading about the things he's done, people get disgusted, and some even intrigued, and they better... Every time I say this, they better not freaking be like him. There are some people like him. They probably go maybe even a step farther than he's ever went in his killings. And necrophilia, oh my gosh. Ugh, that made me sick. Having sex with dead bodies? That is beyond disgusting! Ugh. And not to mention, it's disrespectful to the dead. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Oh, it grosses me out so much. Anyway, I'm gonna end this podcast here, and if you enjoyed me reading about Jeffrey Dahmer, let me know in the comments below, and follow my Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt, and you can go ahead and follow my Twitch again. I'm streaming again now, finally, after all this time, and don't freaking become a murderer. It's not worth it. You don't want to face life in prison. And I will see you guys next week. Stay creative!